Hey everyone, what's up and welcome to the channel. We are back today and we're going to be talking about how to improve your aim in XDefiant. This game has been a ton of fun. There's a pretty high skill ceiling to it. There's a lot of movement potential, but with high movement potential comes highly difficult aiming scenarios, which some of you may be struggling with. So whether you're an experienced player, whether you're a new player, I think there will be something for everybody here. I want to make it clear at the beginning of this video that we will be talking over ways to improve on controller and on mouse and keyboard. I've been primarily playing this game on mouse and keyboard, but I have over 15 years of experience playing games on controller as well. I've played almost all of my time on Apex with controller, so I have lots of experience on both. I hope I can help you out here. We're going to be talking about some strategies you can utilize in game. We're going to be talking about some resources you can use out of game, and just overall technique. So yeah, we're gonna hop in game right now. I'm just gonna talk about a couple of settings, just overall sensitivity before we get into the actual practice range. All I ask is if you guys enjoyed the video, a like is always appreciated. Subscribe if you guys want to see more. All right, so in terms of settings, I've actually already made a settings video, a best settings video, going over controller settings, mouse and keyboard settings. So I'm gonna have that linked up in the cards right about now if you guys did want to go check that out. But the only settings I kind of wanted to talk about were sensitivity, just because they are the most highly talked about settings in just first-person shooter video games. I want to place emphasis on the fact that it's important that you find a sensitivity, whether it's on mouse and keyboard or controller, that is comfortable for you. In terms of aim assist, I highly recommend you leave this on. In terms of aim response curves, there is truly no best aim response curve. I mean, we got the boy Lyric, who just dropped like 130 something kills on controller, and he plays on standard response curve, I'm pretty sure. I like playing on linear. I know a lot of COD pro players, they play on reverse S curve. You can truly become a master of any of these curves and be absolutely incredible at the game using any of these. So don't sweat too much about settings. And in terms of sensitivity, you want to be making sure you choose something that you feel like you can control. But there is a lot of target switching scenarios in this game, so making sure you're choosing something that isn't too slow to the point where you're clearly putting yourself at a disadvantage is the only thing you should really be accounting for. As for mouse and keyboard, I play on a sensitivity of 18. This is about 35 centimeters per 360, meaning if I moved my mouse 35 centimeters like a ruler, that would do one full 360. I think in a game like this, with the amount of target switching and the amount of tracking you actually have to do, I think anything from a 25 centimeters up to like a 45 centimeter range is kind of like the sweet spot, or at least what I would call the sweet spot for aiming in this game. Anything in between there will work. Obviously, some are, one is much more sensitive than the other, but it's just a matter of becoming efficient with your sensitivity. And so in terms of settings, that's really all I wanted to talk about. It doesn't really need to get any deeper than that. Like I said, I do have a settings video going over everything in detail if you don't have your settings set up already, but we're gonna get into the firing range because I wanted to talk about different ways you can use different parts of this range to make your aim better. All right, so now that we're in the firing range, there are 3 different areas that you can utilize. There's pretty much nothing going back here. I mean, this is just like teasers and stuff like that, but the abilities and ultras tab is currently closed. I don't know when this will be opening up, but I can assure you that there is nothing in there that is important enough to aid in your aim improvement journey that you can't be getting from the assault course and the firing range. The firing range is the meat and potatoes of what we're going to be talking about today, but this is just like an area where you can experiment with your abilities to actually test it on real dummies. So don't sweat about it. We're going to go to the firing range and talk about what we got going on over here first. I'm going to try to talk about everything as quickly and efficiently as I can. Sorry if I get a little bit rambly. I can tend to get rambly at times, but we got 3 sections in this firing range. We got the spray board, we got these weapon evaluation targets, which are actually really useful for making builds. You can actually see when you shoot these things just how many bullets it takes to kill a target. Under my face cam, you guys can't quite see it, but it says 6 bullets to kill, 86% accuracy, last damage hit was 17. The TTK, it says 1 second 41 milliseconds, the exact TTK you get, and it tells you also the range that you're shooting for each target: 5 meters, 10 meters, 15, 25, and the furthest one is a 50-meter target. So a very, very information-full section of the range, which doesn't have as many training opportunities as these 2 areas, but I'll get into that again. And then we also have this area over here, which is just clustered with a bunch of different faction targets. I like these because there's so many targets, some of which are close together, and they actually have the health pools of the factions themselves. They're very true to size. Like you could see the hitbox of the Libertad right there. If I shoot the white border or the white outline, it doesn't actually do damage. You have to hit the exact hitbox. Headshots count on this, body shots count on this, and faction health pools also count on this. Phantoms, they have 120 health. You can see the extra little tick at the bottom of their health bar there. So yeah, these are the 3 different tools. First of which we're gonna talk about the spray board. If you're ever experimenting with a new weapon and you plan on using it for the day, I always recommend you come into here and actually just play around with the recoil a little bit. This tool is probably the most effective way to learn recoil control in this game. Not that recoil control is all that crazy. The MDR is the first weapon of which travels up and to the left of my knowledge. I'm pretty sure almost every other weapon in the game just goes up and to the right. Obviously some are like up and slightly to the right, some are pretty much just straight up, but I don't think that there's anything in this game that has like an up to the right, up back to the left pattern. There's nothing like that. So it's more so just really drilling it out and getting that muscle memory down and being able to understand what weapons feel like and knowing how to control them accordingly. I like to use this spray board because this outer circle is what I consider accurate shooting, at least at ranges. I like to start off sitting as close as I can to the spray board and getting these sprays down to what should look like a pixel-sized dot. I'm using an extended magazine on this, by the way, so I have 45 rounds. I highly recommend you use extended mags because it'll allow you to shoot the weapon for as long as possible and also control it for as long as possible. I feel like I can do a bit better there. That is a lot better in my opinion. Once you feel comfortable at a range, I mean, you could just back up. I tend to like jump backwards because you can kind of like count how many increments you are away from the actual spray board. But I'll try it again. And like to get the recoil down as much as possible. Obviously, I recommend you don't move on until you feel like you could get at least 5 sprays consistently, 5 to 10 sprays where you are controlling the recoil exactly how you want to be controlling that. You'll then proceed, once you feel like you've mastered this range, to back up, master this range, back up, and eventually, especially for SMGs, this is good practice, could be all the way back to here. And that's where that first outer ring, I think, is most important. I think if you can control your spray within that first outer ring, you're recoil controlling fairly effectively. The MDR is fairly kicky, so I'll give it a shot here. And I mean, it wasn't terrible. The reticle actually isn't accurate on this gun, so it does move off center a little bit, but there's definitely work to be done here. I could sit here probably for 30 minutes. Mastered enough, you're gonna be able to really get these sprays down, and I think that this is an important foundational part of improving your aim in XDefiant. Next up, we're gonna be moving on to the weapon evaluation tab. I'm getting technical. I'm trying to call by the names just in case y'all get confused, okay? This section of the range, I like to practice it specifically for recoil smoothing. I think it's a great spot in the range, specifically because you have this furthest target to really tell if you're recoil smoothing properly. If you guys don't know what recoil smoothing is, I made a video on it the other day talking about, you know, all things explained regarding recoil smoothing and how it works and how to do it effectively. If you guys didn't watch, I'll have that up in the cards right about now. You can click that. But recoil smoothing is essentially just the implementation of strafe, because when you move your mouse or your camera at a certain degrees per second at a certain speed above a certain threshold, it'll cancel out recoil so that it makes it easier to track targets that are moving quickly or when you're moving. And so yeah, I like to do that on these dummies. I like to aim for headshots on the first 3. Even the 4th is pretty good target to shoot headshots on. The last one, I like to just make sure I'm spraying this thing down as efficiently as possible. So I like to practice recoil smoothing. I didn't have many bullets there, but obviously the headshots just create smaller targets to aim for. And you should be able to get your guns down to 0 recoil, even on something as potent as the MDR at the furthest target. You can spend a little bit of time here. The only other things I really recommend being able to do here is a little bit of target switching scenarios. I really don't recommend, that was a terrible, that was a whiff of a spray right there, but I really don't recommend spending a whole lot of time target switching here. The only thing that I like to do is sometimes this one, and then going back, like basically going front, back, front, back, front, back, front, back along the line. It's pretty predictable though. It's not the most difficult thing to do, but it is something you could do here. Speaking of which, is the most effective tool in this range outside the spray board and information is this area here. In XDefiant, target switching is probably one of the more common scenarios you're going to run into in terms of type of aiming. If you've ever played a game like Apex Legends is a very reactive tracking based game. There's a lot of tracking, a lot of smooth tracking moments, a lot of reactive tracking moments. It's very tracking based, and given there is still opportunities where tracking is necessary in XDefiant, but nowhere near to the extent that you'd be tracking in a game like Apex Legends. One thing that this game does bring into light a lot more frequently though is your ability to target switch. And target switching, or what a lot of people call like flicking, is a very important and difficult skill to master. There's a lot of things that go into target switching, and if you can master target switching along with having decent tracking, you're gonna do really well in XDefiant. And so that's why I like to come over here. Like I was saying though, a lot of these closer targets really do simulate a scenario where you might turn a corner and run into a bunch of enemies who are clustered together. And I can't count the amount of times people will turn and just be like, I don't know who to shoot. They see a bunch of targets and they just start spraying in their general direction and maybe do a bit of damage to one before you get everybody's attention and get taken out before you even get a kill. Learning to target switch between cluster targets is the most effective way to take people out quickly and maximize your damage output without being overwhelmed. So really clean lines, really quick flicks, but all prioritizing accuracy. I did want to define what makes a good target switch. Whether you're on controller, whether you're on mouse and keyboard, this is something you want to be striving for no matter your input. A clean target switch is going from one target to another as fast as possible, but not at the expense of your accuracy. If you actually had a pencil or a pen that showed you the line that I drew going from one target to another, if I drew that line slowly, or if I drew that line fast within control or within my limits, they would both be just as accurate. If anything, I actually think the quicker flick would be a little bit more of a straight line than the slow line. A lot of people mistake slow for more accurate, but that's not always the case. And the reason why you want to draw as straight of a line as possible when flicking from one target to another is because if I went from here and I was like, oh, there's a target over here, target over here, target over here, target over here. I did a little squiggly in between going from one guy to the next guy. It's a lot of wasted camera movement. Wasted camera movement is, you know, basically making your gameplay less efficient. You're burning time. You're increasing the opportunities for enemies to react to you. And so you want to make sure you do things as quickly but accurately as possible. And so once again, practicing cluster target switches is a very common scenario that you're gonna run into in XDefiant. But cluster target switching isn't the only type of target switching that you're gonna be doing in XDefiant. There are a lot of moments where you might be peeking a guy in the distance over here, and suddenly in the corner of your eye, you notice somebody peek an angle much closer to you across your screen over here. These are wide target switches. They're a little bit more difficult than cluster target switches because there's a lot more distance to be covered, especially on controller. You know, some players deal with slower sensitivities, but being able to switch to that target in as straight of a line as possible and as quickly as you can without sacrificing accuracy all still apply in terms of principles. I can't tell you the amount of times people will jump around a corner and also cross your face and cause you to react really quickly. These are all big target switches and something you want to practice in this firing range. I highly recommend so, not by switching between close together targets, but if you're here, flick from one side of the range to the other side of the range, to the other side of the range, to the other side of the range. This isn't something you want to get carried away with though, like prioritizing speed. It's so common people will prioritize speed and ruin the efficiency of their flicks. A lot of times when you're tracking someone, a person who is efficient at tracking a target only needs to read the target for about a second. A lot of times you can pay attention to other enemies in your peripheral vision and help locate them. And if you know their position, it'll allow you to make a cleaner first initial flick, even if they're across your screen. So I'm paying attention to this phantom over here. I see him. I see him. I see him. I'm going as fast as possible, but I'm not doing so to be inaccurate. Another thing you're gonna realize, it may look like I'm constantly making one flick to go from one target to another, to another, to another. And it's like, oh my God, like how like it all just looks so accurate. A lot of times though, flicking is switching onto a target, and that was a perfect wide angle flick. That comes with practice, but I might flick to this guy and I'm off target. You wanna be flicking as fast and accurately as possible, but this micro adjustment should always be as slow and precise as possible. You want to micro adjust slow, flick fast. I'm on target. 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 I'm purposely whiffing, but you get my point. Any micro adjustments, you should really take your time with, because that's where the shot actually gets pulled out. I know I'm spending a lot of time here kind of explaining target switching. I'm getting really into it. Like I said, I sorry if I'm rambling a bit, but yeah, like I said, cluster target switches, wide angle target switches. And if you really want to add some pressure to the scenario, that's where I like this firing range, because you can actually start reactive based target switches where targets will pop up out of the blue, and it really tests your ability to focus on things in your peripheral vision, because when there isn't any targets to just randomly flick onto, you actually have to be paying attention to where the next possible threat could pop up. And so I'm going to do one run through of what it looks like trying to target switch as efficiently as possible and pay attention to my peripherals with the reactive based targets that are going to pop up. Gotta reload. The only thing you gotta make sure is you don't step outside that line or the challenge ends. And that was a really slow time, but at the end of the day, I'm just trying to make an example. This is with an MDR. You could use the most accurate weapons as possible to make the target switching practice a little easier, but at the same time, if you want to get better at recoil controlling in a realistic scenario of switching between targets, I highly encourage you to try this with a weapon that isn't exactly easy to control either. And so that's how you can use the spray board. You can use these targets, you can use these targets to all create little warm-up routines that you can implement before your gaming sessions to get better at the game. In terms of what I do before I actually get into a game, I tend to aim train with resources outside of game, which I'll get into in just a little bit. But when I do actually get into game, I like to just run around, implement a little bit of movement into my aim, and just switch between some targets. I don't really generally do the actual reflexive aspect of it, although sometimes I like to do one or two. It's kind of whatever you prefer to do. I just like to switch between some wide angle targets, practice a couple cluster target switches, and I pretty much call it from there and get into games. The second part of the course I want to talk about was the assault course, because once again, this guide is all about how to get your aim better in XDefiant, but there is lots of movement in this game, and it's not just movement from the enemies, it's movement from you. And this firing range portion encourages you to speed run through an obstacle course while trying to hit targets as quickly and efficiently as possible. Familiar faces we're seeing here, a target switching scenario from here all the way to over here. You're gonna wanna flick fast, micro just slow, but you also want to go through this as quick as possible. And so that's why I feel like this area can help you get in tune with how to be efficient with the game's movement mechanics, because you're wanting to run it in as quick of a possible time, but you also want to get good at target switching while under the pressure of having to deal with your movement mechanics and the pressure of time, which is just enemies popping up around corners in game. So I'm gonna do one little run through here just to show you guys like what it looks like. I know a lot of you have seen it, but switch here, make sure I hit a slide jump, be quick, little thing here, slide down here. A lot of times too, you're gonna wanna be making sure you're shooting while constantly on the move. And this is important because there's just so many aspects of XDefiant where you kind of have to stay running around. People are hitting little spinnies in your face, air strafing around corners, and we could practice aiming all day, but unless you practice aiming in a movement realistic scenario, it's not exactly going to help you out the most. So making sure you get a good blend of both. You can obviously get a ton of this training by just playing the game, but this is just a resource that's honestly a lot of fun to grind. I've spent too much time in here just farming this one obstacle course for fun. I am going to play my best time. I'm pretty sure I broke sub 25, so like in the 24-second range. I'm gonna show you what that looks like when I'm absolutely trying my hardest and I've been playing this for 45 minutes straight.
You can't hide now.
So yeah, that was my fastest run in the Assault course. Let me know down in the comments if any of you have beaten this time. I honestly was sweating my pants off trying to run this as fast as possible. So I'd be surprised if one of y'all beat me. I thought it was a really fast run. Let me know down in the comments. I'd be really impressed. So those are all the ways in game that you can get better at aiming in XDefiant. But I did want to talk about just a couple of things that I use outside of game to aid in my aiming journey in any game, not just XDefiant. And this is actually something you could potentially do on controller as well, which I'll talk about a little bit after the mouse and keyboard bit. All right, so one game I actually play a lot. I play this on the daily, anywhere from around an hour and a half to 2 hours a day, doing routines that have been made by other people. You can come up with your own routines as well. I really like some of the stuff other people have made, and so I follow it. But in these aim trainers, we're playing Kovacs. This is an aim trainer. It's probably the #1 aim trainer in the world. There are a lot of other aim trainers you could use to help you get better in game in XDefiant, but I think Kovacs has the greatest scenario variety to choose from, the most custom community of different things you can play, and yeah, it just has the biggest variety. So I think it's just the best aim trainer. Like I said, there is always going to be instances where you run into every type of aiming in XDefiant. There are dynamic clicking scenarios, static clicking scenarios, smooth tracking scenarios, reactive tracking scenarios, speed target switching scenarios, and evasive target switching scenarios. If you don't know what these are, you should look them up on YouTube. It's honestly really helpful in just understanding aim better, especially from a mouse and keyboard standpoint. I'm not going to explain all those right now. That could literally just be like 10 videos worth of content to make. Speed target switching and evasive target switching are the most common scenarios you're going to run into. I actually follow a aim training routine. It's like 6 days a week. I mean, he made it 7, but the 7th one is movement based, and I just play the game a lot anyways. But it's made by Low Gravity 56. He makes some great stuff. I honestly love this. He makes target switching scenarios, which I do on Friday and Saturday. One of the most common target switching scenarios that you probably have all seen is something like Jumbo Frenzy Towel, which you see everybody play, and just spam as quickly as possible. This, in my opinion, is yes, target switching, but it's not the greatest form of aim training you could be doing. I do this as a warm-up to the routines that I normally do, and it's not because it's a good scenario. I just think it's something that gets my hand moving and gets the blood flowing, and so I enjoy doing it. And I'll probably finish this run to just see what we could get. I'm doing it while talking. I don't really ever normally talk while aim training, so this is kind of weird to me, but we'll just keep spamming this as fast as possible. Shouldn't be too much more time left. And that was actually a pretty good score. I was 3 off of my highest score. You can see how many times I do this on the regular, just every day warming up, but that was a pretty good score. I'm proud of that. So yeah, that is a very common target switching scenario, but once again, that's more clustered. That's kind of simulating something that's ginormous and in your face. But if you get into some other target switching routines, evasive target switching is actually something I think is more common in XDefiant than just speed target switching. Speed target switching, once again, is the ability to target switch, whether it's clustered little flicks or ghost flicks, which are like off your screen. But evasive target switching, a little more common in this game. There is still a decent amount of tracking, and so you might flick onto a guy, but then he might be, air strafing and jumping in circles. So you're still gonna have to track pretty heavily after that. Some of these scenarios, I mean, I'll play one of them. Being able to flick between moving targets and being able to track them effectively, you're switching as fast and accurately as possible, then implementing good tracking mechanics is something that's very beneficial. Like I said, this is a much harder scenario than like the Jumbo Towel Frenzy. Not that this is like a super difficult scenario, but it's something that really simulates something you'll run into a lot in XDefiant. He has a wide variety of scenarios, but essentially what you are looking for if you are going to try some of these aim trainers and want to find scenarios for yourself. Just clustered flicks, wide angle flicks, and flicks that require a decent amount of tracking afterwards, whether it be a reactive tracking scenario or a smooth tracking scenario. And to conclude this video, for the controller players out there, if you do play linear response curve in XDefiant, and it's a big reason why I'm a fan of it, linear is just raw input on a controller. And Aim Labs is something that actually offers controller support in their aim trainer. And if you wanted to set up linear in that aim trainer, it would really be a very similar feel to what you could get when you set up your settings right in XDefiant, and be almost like a one-to-one translation without aim assist in Aim Labs, obviously, but it's a raw and practical way to actually practice your controller aim. I think some of these jumbo tile frenzy scenarios are a lot more difficult, like the one I showed you in It's Timmy's warm-up. This would actually be a pretty decent challenge on a controller, and it's something you could completely grind and farm out, because being able to effectively target switch and get efficient with the controller's raw input, once you hop in game and you can get good with that with aim assist, I mean, you'll be on God mode. So those are some resources you can use outside of game to get better at aiming in XDefiant. I hope I went through the range and gave you a variety of ways you can use the tools they offer to get better. And I think that covers everything I wanted to talk about. I love talking about aim. Honestly, I really am passionate about like getting better at aiming and just the game in general. I really do want to, you know, let's do something with XDefiant, bro. I hope this helped you out. And if you guys want to see more guides in terms of like maybe some of these other aiming categories, I would love to talk about those. Obviously, some of these are a lot less relevant in XDefiant in terms of the frequency in which you'll run into the scenario, but we could talk about it. We could talk about some movement. I'd love to make a movement guide on this game as well. All of it. Just let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions down in the comments. I hope I helped you out. If you guys enjoyed, a like is always appreciated, and subscribe if you guys want to see more. But I'll catch you guys in the next video. I do stream every day as well. Just want to throw that in there, a little shameless self promo. If you want to watch my Twitch, link to that will be in the description. We've been playing every day. The support has been unreal. Thanks for all the new subscribers on the channel. And yeah, catch you guys in the next video. Have a great rest of your day. Keep up, stay up. Peace, man.